So if someone were to Google self-directed retirement accounts, one of the other things that may come up is prohibited transactions. So can you go into detail exactly what this means?
Yes. So what I'll say is there are some very particular assets that are considered collectibles that are off the table. The prohibited transactions are investing in assets like automobiles. They could be even some collectible coins that are, not circulated coins. They could very well be artwork, rugs, paintings. Those are the types of assets that you do have to steer clear from. Not common, but there's obviously some investors that would be interested in investing in those assets. But the prohibited transaction is probably more associated with the disqualified individual. And what does that basically mean? I cannot invest, or I'm prohibited from investing in an asset that is directly managed or influenced by an operator who is someone in my direct lineage. Let me break that down. So if my wife or my parents or my children, those are the people in my direct lineage, and even myself, if we were in some way, shape, or form operating or managing or having any type of decision making powers over an apartment complex renovation, I would not be able to use my self directed retirement funds to invest in that. So that's just the way legislation, Internal Revenue Code, and publications were developed. They don't allow me to invest in those types of assets that are controlled or managed by anyone in my direct lineage. So you've got those prohibited assets, artwork and so forth, but it's more closely associated with stay away from the assets that are tied to you and anybody in your direct lineage. And we get that question a lot. And we get people that want to actually do that more often than not. They want to take their retirement funds and invest in their real estate syndication because they're the general partner. They believe in the project. They want to show they've got more skin in the game. Unfortunately, they can't do that. They need to go invest with their friends' syndication.
Yeah, that's helpful to understand. And is there, I would love to work through maybe a couple of examples about this. So, you're talking about big time projects, syndications, that sort of thing. Does that apply to an individual home also? Like, let's say I have a property that I want to fix and flip, and maybe there's a chance, maybe the plan is to sell it afterward, but also the plan could be to hold it as a rental. Is there any way that my self directed retirement account could be involved in that process?
Yeah. So, no, I guess the short to answer your question specifically, no. And I'm so glad you brought this up, Andrea. Let me dive into that, if you will. So, let's just assume, Andrea, that you actually wanted to hold a short term, you love to travel, a short term rental in a beautiful part of, let's just say Central America. And that is totally fine. You can hold that asset in your solo 401k or in your self directed IRA. You can rent it out. You can collect some great recurring revenue on that. However, knowing that you love to travel, Andrea, you would never be able to stay in that property in Central America. A lot of people want to do that. They want that to be a property that their family can even go vacation in, but that's hands off. So that's a really, really good scenario. Another scenario that's similarly tied to that or close to it is, let's say you found a short term rental in a beautiful part of the South, and you want to renovate that property because you know it has potential and that you can get that on the market within the next 6 months.
Mm.
Maybe you are a flipper by trade and you know how to take a property and spruce it up. You can't do the work if you decided to buy that property with your solo 401k. You'd
Mm.
actually have to contract everything. In fact, you'd have to get a property manager to run that short term Airbnb going forward, because the idea is that you cannot associate your own self or your work with that asset. You have to allow somebody else. I always like to say you have to be at arm's length from that investment.
That's helpful to understand because it's very nuanced in there, right? And so, with your initial answer being no, as far as, being able to be, own the fix and flip, but then actually maybe the answer is, it sounds like yes, as long as I didn't have a main role or any role in that process. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yes, I love how you put that. You cannot have a main role. You can't be that. You can't have that main character moment. You've gotta be that like co-star. You know what I mean? You've got to let the professionals come in and do that. And that can be so hard for people who have all the right tools and resources to do it affordably. They just need to make sure that somebody else is doing it.
Gotcha. Okay. And then I think I know the answer to this question also, but let's just clarify this as well. From a private money lending standpoint. So let's say now it's not that I'm just owning the property and the whole thing, that process. But from a private money lending standpoint, let's say that my dad came to me, or my sister came to me, maybe sister's allowed, dad or kid came to me with a property that they want to by themselves, and they are asking for me to be a private money lender on this property. Is that allowed in that instance?
No, because I'm going to assume at this point that they are the main operator
Mhm.
of that investment. If your family member, your sibling, was a participant as an investor with very limited powers, right? You've got the general partner mentality and the limited partner. If they were a limited partner and you guys wanted to go in together as investors with no control over the operation, totally fine. But if it was your sibling that was, maybe they needed the funds to invest in the asset itself and you wanted to lend to them, you could not do that. You can't, you really do need to stay away from that. And I will say this, although there is some really firm publications that say, do not invest with, or do not invest in an asset that is controlled or managed by anybody in your direct lineage. You don't want to play around with the gray area because in a lot of cases, that's where you could get in trouble. And maybe there's new tax law that's developed because of your specific instance that was questionable. So never invest in anything that could be questionable. Don't get me wrong. And I don't want anybody to interpret. There are family members that will invest in an asset uh, at, simultaneously,
Mhm.
both as limited partners, no control over the investment.
That's so helpful. Thanks for clarifying some of those examples because I feel like, once again, that it's very nuanced. And so just wanted to make sure people were kind of understanding what that means exactly. Hey there, it's Andrea. If you enjoyed this video, hit subscribe so you never miss another one. Thanks.